Can we really reuse beef bones over and over and over again to make multiple batches of bone broth? Well, tonight in the News from Mary's Nest, I'm going to share my experiences, and they have been very eye-opening. Hi, sweet friends. I'm Mary, and welcome to Mary's Nest. I'm a former New York City girl, but now I live the simple life with my sweet husband here in the Texas Hill Country. And this channel is all about cooking from scratch, making home remedies, and creating a cozy home. So if you're like me and you want to live the simple life, no matter where you live, be sure to subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Well, as I've shared with many of you in previous videos, I've been making multiple batches here at my nest. And whether or not they've come out gelatinous or not has been a very interesting adventure for me. And I wanted to share with you an update on everything that I've been going through. First of all, as I've shared with you, you can make perpetual batches of bone broth, beef bone broth specifically. But are they perpetual like forever? No. But I figure like this, if you can get 2, hopefully 3 batches out of one set of bones, it becomes cost effective. And in addition to making it cost effective, it's also just nice to make it homemade, because I really do feel, in my humble opinion, that it is better than what we can buy at the store. However, how many batches can we really get out of one set of bones? And what type of bones do we really need to make sure are in the original batch to make the future batches gelatinous? That's what I want to talk about tonight. What I've found is that in the original batch of beef bone broth that you start with, you must have at least one set of high collagen, high cartilage bones that are high in collagen. And those are your oxtails, your neck bones, your knuckles, and your patellas or your patella femurs. Now, the other bones that you have in, fine, whatever you want. Your marrows, your shanks. The shanks give a nice color, you know, especially if you roast them, they give a nice color and a nice flavor to bone broth. But the most important is that you have some of those high cartilage bones. Now, I have been experimenting with all of them. And I'm here to tell you which ones I think work the best, because I made it to 3 batches of bone broth that were still gelatinous. And the ones that I found were the best were the oxtails. And I wasn't surprised, because oxtails are my favorite to use whenever I make bone broth. Because even when I just was making one batch before I started realizing that I should reuse bones and so on and so forth, you know, we would eat the meat and so that and the other thing, and then I would discard the bones. But then I realized, no, even if we eat the meat, I'm not discarding the bones. We're going to try to make more batches of bone broth to make this very cost effective. And my first batch of bone broth made with oxtails is always really, really gelatinous. And when you look at the oxtail, after the first batch, it still seems to have a lot of cartilage in it. So that would lead you to believe that, okay, probably as that melts and disintegrates into the second batch of bone broth, it's going to make the second batch gelatinous as well. And that's definitely what I found. Now, how about neck bones, knuckles, and patellas? They don't work as well. They do create a gelatinous broth, and definitely on the second batch. But the third batch is starting to get a little watery. Now, as I've shared with you, people have told me that they can get 12 batches of gelatinous bone broth. But to be honest with you, I'm not having that kind of luck. I think if you get 3 batches, maybe 4, I'm working on a 4th, which I'll be reporting back to you on that to let you know how it comes out. But that 4th batch is involved, I'm using oxtails. So it's involved with oxtails. And so I think that it may be good. I'm not sure. We're gonna find out, and I'll definitely share more details with you on that when that 4th batch is done. But I have found that if you just have one knuckle, one patella, or even a couple of neck bones, you're going to get a nice gelatinous bone broth the first time, and maybe the second time. But the third time, it's really starting to become watery. So what have we learned? if we really want to make a perpetual bone broth that is gelatinous after a number of batches, and we'll see, as I said, if number 4 is going to come gelatinous or not, but I have hopes, we'll see. I think oxtails are going to be the best way to go so you make your initial investment in oxtails. And I just had one, in one particular batch, I just had one big fat oxtail. And after my 3rd batch, it still was showing that it had some cartilage. So we'll see how batch number 4 comes out. If you like talking about bone broth in a lot of detail like this, be sure to give me a thumbs up and let me know in the comments below any questions that you have about this, because I often think that I've answered a lot of questions and then I get even more questions and I realize there's a lot of things that I've overlooked, especially for beginning cooks. So if you're new to cooking, new to making bone broth, and you have comments, don't worry about, you may think that they seem very basic or silly or whatnot. There's no silly questions when it comes to cooking, and no simple questions, especially when you're new to cooking. So leave me a comment below. Anything that I've been, possibly unclear about, or anything you need more detail or more instruction, I'll definitely answer your questions, and you can also check in the description below. I put my email there. You can email me, and I'll definitely help you with this. And I'll definitely try, depending on how many similar questions I get, to do a video on that particular question to help clarify even more. So I researched some of these folks that were saying that they were getting 12 batches of gelatinous bone broth, and they were talking about putting beef feet into their bone broth. This is a new one for me. I have never seen beef feet sold. And I was curious, beef feet, was this the hoof? That would certainly have some collagen to release into the bone broth and to make the broth gelatinous. But, unless you were able to get this directly from a rancher, I don't think you're finding beef feet at your local grocery store. So I think we need to work within the confines of bones we can find at our grocery store, or maybe at a specialty store like Whole Foods or something like that, or what we can get from local ranchers. If you live in an area where you can buy these sort of things at the farmer's market. But even myself, I live in Central Texas and I live near a lot of ranches. I've not seen beef feet at the farmer's market. So you have to let me know if you have in your area ever seen them at the farmer's market. And I think if we find them, we have to grab them and make bone broth. And then after, exhausting our local resources, whether it's the supermarket or the farmer's market, as I've shared with you, I buy a lot of bones online through U.S. Wellness Meats. And I've been very happy with them. And I'll link, I did an unboxing the other day for an order that I received that I had purchased from them. And I'll put a link in the description below. I'll put in the iCard and in the description below a link to that video, so you can see how they package it and what I bought and all this, that, and the other thing. And I'll also put a link to their website in the description below. And definitely go look over there, look at their prices, see how it compares to your local sources. And also, I think you'll be very pleased with the selection they have, because they have the best selection I've ever seen online. And I've never seen the same selection at the farmer's market or the grocery store. So it's nice. They can really help fill in those areas of different types of bones that you may want, to make your bone broth. So I think the bottom line for all of this perpetual bone broth experiment, at least what I have experienced, is that you need to have those high cartilage bones. You cannot just start with shanks and marrow bones and expect, even your first batch, I don't know how gelatinous it's going to be, because you're not going to get a lot of gelatin from the shanks. And you have to remember that your marrow bones, the actual bone, does contain collagen, and soaking it in the acidulated water about an hour before you turn it up to temp and get the bone broth going will leach out the collagen. but it's not as high in collagen as your high cartilage bones. And it's the collagen that ultimately makes your bone broth gelatinous. And oh, Mary, why all this talk about gelatinous broth? I know I've gotten a lot of questions from you all about that. And the reason I stress the gelatinous nature of the broth so much is because, and this is not something I'm just making up in my own head, is that everything I read online, you know, from scientists and nutritionists and so on and so forth, is that we want the gelatin from the broth to nurture our joints, nurture our skin, our hair, our nails, and most importantly, it's to nurture our gut health. Because as we're learning and we hear over and over again, you know, gut health is so important, because if we have good gut health, then we have good gut flora, and that makes us, you know, the good bacteria, and that makes us healthier. So that's why I kind of harangue on about making gelatinous bone broth. But in any event, so yeah, my experiences, I had a lot of batches of bone broth going with a lot of different bones, experimenting, what bones were making the best bone broth. And I think, as I've shared in my video, and I'll link to that in the iCards and in the description below, my best bones for bone broth. And I probably do like a little overkill in a way, now that I've learned from all my experimentation, because my favorite mixture is to have your marrow bones and to have your oxtails. But instead of shanks, because beef shanks can be a little expensive, I like to use neck bones. And because they've got the meat, and they've got cartilage, and they've got bone, a little fat, they got a little bit of everything. And I brown them the same way I would brown the shanks. So I get the brown color, which makes it nice and appetizing, which also adds a good flavor, but it's also got cartilage in it, so that's adding to the gelatinous nature of the bone broth. Then I put in an oxtail or two, which I also brown, because that's got some meat and fat, and that adds color and flavor. And the oxtails have that big, it's, as it implies, it's the tail of the animal. It's got that big tailbone right in the middle, which is primarily all cartilage. And so that goes in. And then my marrow bones, because I always like to have the marrow in, because I eat the marrow. It's incredibly nutritious, and I either, as I've shared with you, I put it on toast, or I just whip it into my bone broth to absorb, eat the nutrients and have my body absorb the nutrients that way. But so that's sort of been my go-to mixture: the neck bones, the oxtails, and the marrow bones. And I find that to be a little more of an affordable blend of bones than just going, than using the shanks. The shanks are pricey. And unless I get them on sale, and for a really good price on sale, I tend not to use them. But those neck bones do double duty, because they've got some nice meat to brown up, and they're high in cartilage. So that's kind of the blend that I've been doing. But for all of these experiments that I've been doing to see how many batches of gelatinous bone broth I could get out of one mixture of bones, I wasn't doing the double insurance policy, so to speak, of having the neck bones and having the oxtails. I either picked, one or the other of my selection of high cartilage bones. So I either picked oxtails as my one cartilage selection, or neck bones, or the knuckle, or the patella, or patella femur. This is my ice maker, sorry. So, and with trying all of those so far, and I will definitely be reporting updates to you on this, because I think this is the biggest thing that we've been discussing, both in comments and in emails, is that this can be an expensive endeavor. So how do we get the most out of our bones to making our own homemade beef bone broth, which I really think is the best way to go, rather than buying it. And even buying it can be kind of pricey, I think. And so what is the best way and the best combination of bones that are the most affordable combination that will get us the most batches of gelatinous broth? And so far I'm finding that if you have, if you do have some shanks, maybe you got them on sale, or any type of meat that you've gotten on sale that you want to use to brown up can be used. But you have to have those oxtails. And then second, if you're choosing, any one of those, you're going to have your oxtails, your neck bones, or, as I said, the knuckle or the femur, one of those, the patella femur, one of those as your main cartilage source. And then your marrow bones, because those are usually less expensive. And then what is going to be your meaty bone to brown up? You may not even need one. You may not even, I was using some shanks because I had gotten them on sale, but you may not even need them if you're browning your oxtail, because it does have meat on it. So I think I'm going kind of long on all of this, and I don't want to confuse you because I've been trying so many different varieties of bones. But in the end, I think that as long as you have oxtails, you can get multiple batches of bone broth. And oxtails and marrows, I think, make a great bone broth. And so far, it's that combination that is providing me the most gelatinous multiple batches of bone broth. And as I said, I had a shank that I browned, or I had sometimes I just had some meat that I browned up to give some color and some flavor to the broth, to the bone broth. I wasn't too concerned about what I was using in that regard. And I think you can be the same way. You can be very flexible. If you have a little bit of chuck, or a little bit of a rump roast or something like that, I think you can even use that. And then certainly enjoy it and eat the meat as well. That's another question I've been getting. Yes, we eat the meat. Nothing goes to waste. And after simmering for 12 hours, after you've simmered your bone broth at 180 degrees for 12 hours, it's just, imagine it, it's like some slow cooked food. My ribs might be very slow cooked or something like that. It's falling off the bone delicious. So you're not wasting anything. And then you just work towards getting a gelatinous bone broth, cooking it properly, don't boil it, keep it at 180, and don't overcook it. Stop at 12 hours when it's a beef bone broth. Chicken bone broth is 6 hours. We'll talk about that another day. And then you can work at creating these perpetual bone broths. And my next project is going to be to really sit down and do the math. And I'm going to see how many batches of perpetual bone broth I was able to get with what particular mixture of bones that worked best and created the most batches of bone broth, and exactly how much each batch more or less worked out in terms of dollars and cents. And then we can compare it to the grocery store. Now, when you buy bone broth from the grocery store, it's often been pressure canned, so they've kind of broke, as the expression goes, the gelatin. So you got to keep that in mind too. Are you getting a gelatinous bone broth, or are you getting something that's been more processed? And I think we'll also have that discussion for another day. And maybe I'll see, what type of bone broth that I can buy, and we can do a little comparison. But I know that, for home cooks, if we pressure can bone broth and then take it out and, refrigerate it, you may not recognize that unless you refrigerate it, because if you pressure canned it and then you just warm it on the stove, you may not realize that the gelatin has been broken. But if you try and refrigerate it after you've pressure canned it, you may find that it's not going to gel up. And so that may also be the case with what we're finding at the grocery store. And I got to tell you, I'm a home cook, and so I'm always going to lean to making it homemade. But we need to make it affordable and attainable. So we're going to study all these different batches, all these different combinations that I'm making. I'll be reporting to you regularly, on my success or lack of success. And then we'll be breaking down what the cost is. So we're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to find out how many gelatinous batches we can get out of one set of bones and which are the best set of bones to get the most batches of gelatinous bone broth, and how much did each individual batch cost. And we'll look at some prices for, your organic grass-fed bones, the best of the best. We'll look at some average, commercially raised bones we can, buy at the grocery store, and we'll just break it all down. And I think that this is really going to help us in the long run to finally answer these questions. How many batches of gelatinous bone broth can we get, and how much does it cost? And is it less expensive than what we can buy at the grocery store? And is it a better quality product? And that's my goal here. And I gather that the same is for all of you from the questions that I've received in the comments, as well as all the emails that I've gotten on this subject. But we're going to get to the bottom of it. If you'd like to learn more about bone broth and cooking from scratch, be sure to subscribe to my channel and then click on this video over here where I show you how to make bone broth from start to finish. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.